Welcome to Blue Compass, where we're discussing how Schema Markup can boost your website's SEO. So most marketers think SEO is simply putting the right keywords into web page copy, but it's much deeper than that. And one of the powerful SEO tactics that many organizations miss is Schema Markup. In fact, pages with schema receive about a 40% higher click-through rate than pages without. And so here to discuss this with us today, Jay and Kaylee, two members of our digital marketing team. And I just wanted to start out, Kaylee, by asking a simple question. What is Schema Markup?
Totally. So schema is essentially just a piece of code that you implement onto your website on a page-by-page basis. And this piece of code is telling Google essentially the cliff notes of your page. What are the key highlights? What does it need to pay attention to? And ultimately, it'll take those key highlights to be able to better understand the content of your page and the context of your page, so it can serve it up for relevant search queries.
This is something we've done for many years here at Blue Compass. I remember when this first kind of rolled out years ago. And Jay, I mean, what are the main benefits? Like, why do we do this? What are the main benefits that you've seen for our clients for different websites when you actually implement this code on a web page?
Yeah, I think Katie said it best in that it's clip notes for crawlers. It gives a really succinct way for these crawlers to know what the page is about, what are the main aspects of it. But it also has direct value of insert results. We call them rich results. Yeah. Things like reviews or featured snippets in occasion, or recipes. These are common ways where you type something into Google and you get all these really interesting results. That is a product of schema, what they would call structured data. So it differentiates you in search in a way that really increases your click-through rate.
Yeah, and so we're showing some of those results now. And basically, if you don't have schema on a web page, the odds that you're going to get some of these more visual results in search are diminished significantly.
For sure. Yeah, it's one of those things that we talk about it quite often. The easier you can make it on Google to index your content or to grab pieces of your content, the better it's going to be for your page. And so structured data or schema, these terms we use relatively interchangeably, are that. They make it really easy for Google to just, all I need to do is grab this recipe title, the directions, the time it's going to take, and I can just throw that into SERP. I don't have to find it and pull it out of the page. It makes it really simple.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny to think about it, but Google is a company, and as massive and huge as it is, it actually has limited resources, just like any other company. And so I always feel like schema kind of shortens the journey of the search bots and makes it a little bit easier for the search bots. And that's one of the reasons why Google and other search engines like schema code, and therefore one of the reasons perhaps that it favors pages that have it more.
Yeah, I think a way to think about the challenge that Google has to work with when it comes to indexing content like that is like if you went to, I'm going to stick to the recipe analogy, if you went to 3 different cooking sites or recipe sites, almost all those recipes are going to have the same aspects, but they're going to structure them in different ways and lay them out in different orders. So you're really, if you don't have schema, you're really relying on Google to understand what the content of the page is about, and then also know where to grab that from and where to put it and all of that. Whereas structured data and schema just gives a succinct, consistent way for Google to do that. And again, you're making it easier on Google and increasing your likelihood of that working out in your favor.
Yeah, it's like you're putting up some guidelines or some guardrails to help Google display things the way you want them to be displayed, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, so Kaylee, how, for a marketer, a business owner, whatever, how do you put schema code onto a web page? How does that work?
Yeah, so it depends. So it depends on what your CMS is. So in Slate, which is our preferred CMS here in Blue Compass, it's super easy. We have a schema field, a schema editor that you can just drop your code into on a page-by-page basis. And that works really well. If you are in WordPress or a similar type of content management system, there are plugins that you can often download to be able to utilize schema for. But if you are in a CMS that doesn't have a schema editor or field on a page-by-page basis, then we would recommend implementing via Google Tag Manager. So there are still workarounds and ways to make it work for your website, no matter what your CMS is. What I would say is an additional step to this that is often overlooked is the importance of validation. So no matter how you are implementing it, making sure that you're validating it multiple times. So typically when we're building it out for a client, for a specific blog article or service page, once we build the initial schema, we're validating it and making sure that it's structured properly and that there's no issues or errors. Before it's implemented, we validate it again, make sure no matter how many hands are on it or how many times that document's been open, a comma hasn't accidentally been deleted out. And then additionally, once it's been implemented and the page is published with that schema, we like to validate it again. Schema is code, and code can easily be broken. And if you put a broken code on your website, it can break things on your website. So it's just really important to treat it with care, not trying to make it a scary thing, but just it's always best to double, triple check your work, no matter how you're implementing it.
Yeah. And now there's a lot of different types of schema. There's like product schema. If you have products on your site, there's organizational schema, and that's something that everyone could put on like the homepage of their website and things like that. But I mean, how do we know what type of schema to use? Is there a place that people can go to find the schema code to use?
Yeah, schema.org has really every informational type of thing that you would need for schema. It can show you templates for different types of schema. It shows you all the different elements that are appropriate to include within certain schema type. It has a validator tool on there, which is what our team utilizes all the time. I just have that bookmarked to use.
It's your homepage.
Yeah, essentially. So yeah, schema.org we use for just about everything.
Yeah. I feel like, schema is something that is often difficult for like maybe a business owner or a marketer. Someone like myself, I'm not a developer, and it's almost starting to get into like development code in a way. So it can be intimidating for people. So, I mean, if this is something that we can help you with, we would be more than happy to do so. This is something we spend a lot of time on for our SEO clients. And so reach out to us if you'd like a hand with it. But that being said, Jay, what are some of the most common mistakes you see, if you look at a web page that hasn't implemented it right? What are some common schema mistakes?
Yeah, Kaylee touched on a couple, and one of those is just syntax errors. That's one of the biggest things. When I say syntax errors, I mean, you're missing a comma, or you're missing a curly brace. Contrary to popular belief, digital marketers are not developers. But so we can miss those things. So it's very easy if you don't understand how the formatting is meant to work, that you will break it and it won't be validated correctly. So running those things through an IDE like Visual Studio or something where it makes really clear where your errors are, super helpful. That's one of the biggest things. The second would be, Kaylee mentioned validation. Not validating your schema once you've implemented it is one of the biggest trip ups that you can make of which once it's out there.
Basically means just like checking to see if it's proper and accurate.
And so there are two validators that we use. We use the schema.org validator, which is just validator.schema.org. You throw either the URL in there or your snippet of code, and it'll tell you whether you're showing up for the schema that you would want to show up for. And when I say show up, it's showing that you're eligible for that schema. The second is the rich result validator through Google. Google actually has a similar list as schema.org for types of schema or types of rich results that you could show up for. And it's specifically checking for those because Google has different criteria that it's looking for. It's looking for all of the similar elements that you'd see with schema.org, but it has certain ones that are required. So with product schema, for example, one that's commonly missed is reviews. Reviews are required as a part of product schema, not as this is a nice to have. So that would be something that would be caught in the validation process. So that's one of the biggest things is validating your schema to make sure it's there. And then the third one would be just implementing in the wrong place. If you're using Slate for an example, it's pretty hard to mess that up. We have a nice field for it, and you just throw it in there. But if you're using something like WordPress or a plugin that you're not really sure where it's going, or you're just trying to paste it in, you end up putting it in the HTML. Yeah, it might work, but that's not Google's best practices. So using something where you're actually implementing it into the head of the site is the way we recommend.
Okay, Kaylee, you have your schema markup on a web page. You launch it, it's all good. Is it good forever? How much do you need to audit it? Do you need to go back and look at it or anything like that? Is schema always consistent? Is it ever changing?
So schema is ever changing. So it's not a leave it and set it forever. So I would say first and foremost, anytime that you're updating the content on a page, go ahead and add it as part of your process that you should audit your schema. Run it back through, pay attention to, is this still relevant with the content on the page or should anything be changed? If you have FAQ in there, is it still the same answer as you had before? And then additionally looking at, are there new opportunities that I perhaps wasn't taking advantage of before or maybe weren't even available? And then outside of that, if you have not maybe made updates to a page, I would say taking a look at your schema on an annual basis, running it through, making sure everything's still functioning properly, nothing was broken, especially you might have a handful of people that work in your CMS popping in and out of things. It is possible that somebody accidentally saved something and deleted something out. So it's always good to be checking that. So I would say if you're not updating the content on the page on an annual basis, just checking in. And then also looking for those opportunities of, is there a field that I wasn't taking advantage of before that I can now? Or schema does roll out new features or new required fields that were not required once. That it's good to keep an eye on that to make sure that you still have it up to date and that you're still eligible for those rich results.
Yeah. I think that's a great point to make about when you're updating the page copy, double checking the schema. I think that's a great time too, if you have schema that's used throughout the site and you have to update it on that one page, that scales outside of that. So now we need to go to all the pages we implemented that schema before and make that update elsewhere.
It's such an opportunity, like putting schema markup on your website, such an opportunity, especially if your competitors have it, if your website doesn't have it, or if you did it, 10 years ago, it's probably not working very well for you. So it's such an important thing to do, especially if you care about ranking well in Google and getting good traffic and things like that.
I would say the other thing is it's become really important for large organizations to, like, where you have complex organizational structures. We have several clients that are starting to get into that category where there's multiple mergers and acquisitions and things happening. And schema is another great way for Google to understand the relationship between your companies and your organization. So you can start to share that brand equity between old sites and new sites, or old and new names. Some of that is just, you can do a little bit through Search Console. You can do a little bit here and there in other ways, but schema makes it so clear just from the head of your homepage. We're associated with this business and this business. We used to be known by this name. And that's a big value for a lot of our clients right now.
It's an example of something that if you just leave it up to Google to figure that out based on your website structure and your content, Google's not going to necessarily figure it out and do a great job. So a wonderful case for schema there. Yeah. Well, if you would like help with schema with SEO, we do really good website audits where we go in and we check out the schema, see what's working, what's not on your website, find really good opportunities. Don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Blue Compass. We'd love to talk with you. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.